Welcome back to another episode of Faith Life Unscripted. I'm pretty excited about today's episode. It's going to be with a guy who really had a lot to do with the inspiration behind why this podcast started. Will Brinkley, who's a first-generation farmer who has an awesome grandfather who used to help me load my corn at 95 years old, is going to bring us some wisdom and talk about life back when and a little about life on the farm. So, Will, tell us about your childhood and what it was like growing up around farmers.
Well, I grew up right here in Davidson County, been here my whole life, and I had probably a pretty normal childhood for someone from the 90s. I actually grew up in a neighborhood. I didn't grow up on a farm, but my grandpa, he was an auctioneer, and he did a bunch of farm auctions, knew a bunch of farmers. He kind of lived over in a rural area. I spent pretty much all the free time I've ever had with him in the summertime and on the weekends. So he'd take me around the farms and stuff like that, and that just kind of inspired me, and I guess that's where I caught the farming bug, and ever since then, it's just been all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
Your grandpa, Bobby, is he 97 now?
He'll be 97 in about 10 days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's fixing to turn 97.
Years old. He was helping me load corn at 95.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
probably still doing it.
He was loading some up when I left this evening. He is a marvel of a human being just to do what he does at his age. He still weed eats, mows the yard and everything. So it's truly amazing, and I hope I get some of that longevity in my life.
Yeah. You'd be hard-pressed to grow up around him and not have a good work ethic.
Oh, yeah. He works all the time.
Yeah.
He works all the time.
Well, speaking of that, what are some lessons you've learned from him, or what kind of influence has he had in your life?
He's, probably the biggest influence in my life by far. When I was a little kid, I was always around him. I was around people his age, and that more than anything shaped how I am now and the way I operate. I never was around any kids my own age, so I was around him, going to auctions, going to farms and stuff like that. So I just became an old soul because those were the people I was around, and he taught me so much just about business and how to treat people and how to talk to people, and that's lifelong stuff that it'll benefit anybody no matter what business you're in. But it's helped me all the way through everything I've ever done, really, and I'm so grateful for him for all those years that I got to go with him when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah. Good times.
Oh, yeah.
Well, growing up in a simpler time, how has that shaped your life?
I think we grew up in a really good time, and I tell you why I think we grew up in a great time, because being our age, early 30s, we're one of the last generations that got to be around that Depression era World War II generation.
Yeah.
And like my grandpa, are absolutely some of the greatest human beings, the most gracious, just absolutely salt of the earth people, and we've lost most of them. There's very few of those people left, and that's one thing I hate my kids and young people today don't get to grow up around those people, because they were just resourceful, gracious, and I don't know what happened with the generations after that, but that generation of people was just awesome people because they all grew up in the same boat.
That's right.
Nobody had anything when they were growing up. Most of them got sent off to war, and they were just a lot of good people.
Yeah.
A lot of good people.
My pastor often says that the baby boomers were the first generation where the parents wanted to dress like their kids. It used to be that the kids looked up to the parents.
Yeah.
Now it's like the parents are trying to be young and like the kids.
When we were kids, all the mamas and daddies looked like mamas and daddies. They were all kind of from the same class, so to speak, and everybody kind of dressed alike. And now, like you say, when I was a kid, my parents set the bar. That's who you wanted to be. You wanted to be like older people. And now it seems like we've got a lot of parents wanting to be like their kids. And I don't know that that's the road we need to be going down. I think we need role models and people that are mature and guide kids the way kids should be guided, because sometimes you can't let kids make their own decisions.
That's right.
You got to be a role model to them. And I was so fortunate in my childhood to have all the role models I had. And like I say, when I went to school, I'd never been around no kids my own age. I was used to being around 70, 80-year-old men. It was a culture shock the first couple of weeks of kindergarten, because I'd never been around any kids that took naps and stuff. Like I just played outside with my tractors and my grandpa all the time. And my oldest little boy, he's a lot like that. He wants to be around his grandpa. And then I said, have at it, son. That's the best role model you could have.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Well, speaking of your childhood, what kind of memories do you have that shaped your life today?
I got a lot of memories of my grandpa taking me. Anytime a tractor would come up the road, didn't matter who it was, we'd jump in the truck and follow them. And most of those farmers have gone on now and left us. But I can remember sitting on fenders, sitting on their lamps. They all knew me, everybody around in a 10-mile radius pretty much. And I just go and they'd pull over at the side of the field and I'd get on their lap and ride. And that's where I got my farming bug. And it was just such a wonderful time to be a kid. And everybody knew you. Everybody knew me through my grandpa. Then I kind of met people along the way, but it was just a really cool time to grow up when I did, and being around the farm and around farmers. And I never wanted to be anything but a farmer. Those were my role models.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to dress like a farmer. Everything I ever did was farm related.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty cool childhood.
Yeah, I agree. Our childhood was just, it seems like it was kind of the end of the simple times. Pre-computers, computers kind of came in when we got a little bit older.
Right. But we can still remember a time when there wasn't nobody had a cell phone.
Yeah.
I remember my grandpa having a beeper. And they'd call you and the number would come up, then you'd have to find a payphone and call them and see who it was. So.
Yeah. Well, I actually started working at the funeral home 18 years ago this month. And when I started, the very first thing my grandpa did was hand me a pager.
Oh, yeah.
I had a digital one, so I thought I was something.
Yeah, big time.
And that was before the first smartphone had come out.
Oh, yeah.
I had a Motorola Razr.
I remember I had a Razr, too.
I thought I was the coolest thing on the block.
Oh, yeah. And you look how we thought that was high-tech. And look at how far it's come.
Oh,
and
goodness.
What's the smartphone's been out? 18, 20 years, maybe? Probably 18, something
17, like probably.
Yeah. See, look, since we graduated high school, how far.
Oh, my goodness.
It has come. It's just crazy.
All the way to AI.
Oh, yeah. And now we're at AI, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I remember when you'd have so many texts, you could send them up.
Yeah.
You have like 400
you were going through the numbers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Our kids today couldn't type like that. Oh, my goodness. 1 through 9. I'd have to ABC. There's no way.
We got fast at that.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty good at it.
Oh, yeah. I got big hands, but I was quick.
Yeah.
It was a different time. We sound like dinosaurs sitting here.
I know it.
Oh, man. But it hadn't been that long ago.
I know it. Well, speaking of your farming, what inspired you to become a farmer, and what keeps you interested and inspired to be a farmer?
I'd always wanted to be a farmer, and I always worked for other farmers once I got teenage years and stuff. I had a really good agriculture teacher in high school with my FFA classes and stuff, Miss Barrier. And she was really a catalyst that put my wheels in motion, so to speak, and got my gears in my mind turning. And then I started actually farming for myself. I think a junior or senior in high school is when I planted my first corn crop and bought some. And the motivation for me for farming is because it's always changing. No 2 years are the same.
Right.
You don't approach it the same. It's just always a challenge. Even if you don't update technology or anything, every year's got its own unique challenges. Now, this year's been a challenge completely, just all the way through. It's been just a terrible year.
Why is that?
Just the weather. You could give a farmer and say, what's the worst scenario you could have for weather? And it would look a lot like this year. Like it wet and then dry and then wet again. Hurricane came through, wind. It just wasn't our year, but it's always a challenge. How can you capitalize on these bad years to keep you in business and keep everything going? The bad years are what define you really in farming. Anybody can get through a good year.
Right.
Can you get through a bad year?
Yeah.
Can you get through 2 bad years in a row? That's the major thing, is getting through 2 bad years in a row if you haven't.
What's a typical day like on your farm?
There's not too many typical days, but right now, as you said, we run a deer corn business, so we bag a lot of corn. So this time of year, I'm up at 4 o'clock, and I'll go to the farm, bag corn till 6:37, something like that. Then I'll go actually have an off-the-farm job working for another farmer doing the same thing.
Right.
And he does heavy equipment work, grading and stuff like that. So I'll go do that, and then I'll come back to the farm in the evenings and work. And this time of year, it's a little slow, but it's really fixing to pick up here in about 2 or 3 weeks when we get started with harvest. And it'll be daylight to dark every day pretty much for a month or 2.
And deer season's around the corner. So
yeah.
It's gonna roll.
It's rolling now. Our crops are terrible this year, but our business has been really good. We've been really blessed with our business. We've had a really good summer, which is kind of unusual. That's your slow time, but we're geared up and ready to go this fall. So hopefully everything will go smooth and get everything out and be ready to make some deer hunters happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anybody listening to this podcast that wants deer corn,
Yep. I'm your man.
Double S Farm is where to go.
That's
I
right.
guarantee it. Well, tell us a little bit about how farming's changed over the years.
Well, it's changed and it hasn't. I haven't been in it really all that long compared to a lot of the older guys, but farming has really consolidated. It's went from a bunch of small farms, no matter where you're at in the country, to farms are getting larger and there's fewer of them, just like most any business in America the past 20, 30 years. And it's got easier because of all the technology, the equipment's better, So, in my opinion, that's why you see guys farming longer, because
easier on their body.
I mean, my grandpa's generation, or the generation before him, say the 40s, 50s, 60s, when they got 65 years old, if they'd been farming their whole life the way they did it then, they were wore out. You couldn't keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Now, with all the equipment we've got and how easy it is compared to, it's not easy, but how easy it is compared to then.
Sure.
You got guys, can farm into their 80s, even their 90s, if they're in the cow business, making hay or whatever. Whereas, like I say, 50 years ago, you were wore out at 60, 65. You didn't see anybody farming into their 80s or 90s unless they were just very fortunate. And that's changed the dynamic because you don't have the opportunity for a lot of young people to go into it because the old guys are staying longer.
Right. Yeah.
And I understand it, but that's the biggest thing I advocate for in farming. There comes a point you've got to turn it over.
Yeah.
And farming is one of the few businesses you see a lot of the old generation, no matter how old they are on the farm, their son could work for them, but the son don't get to make any decisions, or daughter.
Yeah.
The old man, he's who makes the decisions. I know farmers 55 years old that's never made a decision on their farm.
Yeah.
Well, then dad keels over at 85.
They don't know what to do yet.
There you go. And I mean, you got to kind of set up in farming anymore, in my opinion, you've got to set up your kids to be successful.
Right.
And part of that's releasing that control. And that's something that has never really changed. But when those guys got wore out back in the middle 19th century, or the 60s or 70s, where they had to turn it over.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to do all the work, I'm going to make some of the decisions. And that's how it went back then. And now it's just a different generation. And the way the older generation thinks now, sometimes in agriculture is not good, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's like that in funeral service, too.
I'm sure.
A lot of the older owners, they don't want to turn loose of the control to their kids. And so they hold on to it. Like you say, sometimes they hold on to it a little bit too long.
Right.
Until it comes down to not out of wanting to do it, but out of necessity.
It's hard to, even though they can do the work, it's hard to run a business, but so long. I mean, you get wore out. I mean, in any business. Burnout.
Yeah.
And I'm to the point, like, I got two boys. If they want to farm, like, when I'm 65, like, let me come over and drive a tractor every once in a while. Y'all handle all the business.
Tell me what to do.
Because I don't like that part anyway. I just want to drive the tractors. Y'all take over, send me a check every quarter or whatever, and I'll just hang out and drive tractors.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy that stays in control till I'm 90, which I'm not there yet, but hopefully I can keep the promise there and just let them take over.
Yeah.
And there comes a point you got to see whether they're going to sink or swim. I mean, that's any business. I mean,
kick them out of the nest.
That's right. And there's part of me that wants them to farm, and then there's part of me that if they don't want to farm, if they want to farm, I want them to be. I want to set them up to be able to.
Right.
If they come to me, either one or both of them, and say, "Hey, we don't want anything to do with this," that's cool. Yeah. I'll sell out when I'm 65 or 70, and me and your mom will go fishing or something. But I don't want to be the one that hangs on to it too long.
Yeah. Sometimes people that hang on to it too long is hanging on to it for the wrong reasons.
It is. And it's like you say, it don't matter what business you're in. You see it in every business. There comes a point you just got to let go.
Yeah.
See if they're going to sink or swim.
Yeah.
Because I'd a lot rather turn my business over to my boys, or either one or both of them, while I'm still there for them to ask me questions and ask me for advice.
Yeah, that's true.
Than holding on to it till I die, and then they'll be like, well, what would they have done?
In the dark.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's doing anybody any favors or being fair.
Yeah, that's good. How do you integrate your faith in your farm and your daily life?
Faith with farmers is kind of a touchy subject. It's not something any of us talk about enough, especially with other farmers. And I try to, I'm very faithful, and most farmers I know are. It's an occupation. You better have some faith, because
that's right.
You're not in control, really. We planted it. It's really the Lord's crop. We're just out there, we're taking care of it for Him. That's the way I look at it.
Stewards.
Yes. And I don't pray for my crop. I pray for the Lord to do it how He wants it done.
Come on.
Like, I don't pray for rain. I don't pray for dry, good growing seasons. I feel like that's greedy.
Yeah.
That's me wanting that.
Yeah.
I say, Lord, I'm tending your crop the best I can. However you see fit to take care of it, I'm going to do the best I can.
Yeah.
And I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You can't worry about it because it will drive you absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's a occupation you really can't. You're out of control. You're just letting Mother Nature and the good Lord take care of it for you, and you can make adjustments here or there, but it's his crop. I'm just the caretaker. But other farmers are the only people that really understand what you're going through. It's very hard to explain farming and the agricultural lifestyle to other people. And to share your faith, you've got to show vulnerability. But at the same time, those farmers, you can't show vulnerability to them because we're all really in competition for land, for resources, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've got farmers that are very faithful, and we talk about it. But for me, just to go out to somebody that I don't know and start talking about it and being vulnerable, well, what are you going to say that they could use? No, I'm not going to say against you, but farmers don't like showing vulnerability at all in anything because they might go to somebody you rent land from and say, even if it's not faith,
is it weakness?
It's weakness.
Yeah.
And you don't want to show a chink in your armor. And sometimes to show our faith, we've got to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's any occupation or any human being.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of farmers that are faithful, but it's very rare for you to talk about it with other farmers.
Yeah.
And farmers are very different. They think very different as a group. I guess you would say they don't all think the same, but they don't want to show any vulnerability because that's a weakness.
Yeah.
And we kind of get hard-headed every once in a while and don't want to show any weakness when it's probably best that we do every once in a while. Because we've all got flaws. That's just human nature.
Well, farming is, in every sense of the way, pretty old-fashioned lifestyle and career, right?
It is.
So what I've seen is that a lot of the people these days, particularly post-COVID, have started being more vulnerable.
Right.
And it sounds like farming's just behind on that. That's just old-fashioned.
It is. And farmers are very private people. I'll come and talk to anybody. But as far as sharing intimate details of what's going on farm with, whether it be finances, crop yields, and stuff like that, that's something you just don't talk about.
Right.
Especially to other farmers.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked for him 15 years, and we talk about what's going on, but as far as like finances and stuff like that, that's not something we discuss. It's just not.
Well, let's talk about TikTok.
Oh boy, here we go.
You went viral on TikTok. What year was it?
I started TikTok, and right after my son was born, that would have been January of 21. So right
21.
In the heart of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us how that happened and what inspired you to post a video on TikTok.
Well, it's kind of its own creature now, or it kind of became its own thing. My wife, when we were married, she was pregnant at the time, and it was COVID time, so nobody was around anybody. You were just in your own little bubble, which being a farmer, that's another thing. A farmer, we didn't really get affected like a lot of other people. The only difference
that's
for us,
where you are anyway.
Lunch in the truck instead of going inside to eat lunch. But she would lay in bed at night, and she'd be listening to TikTok. And I thought it was like the biggest waste of time. Like, I'm over there reading something because I'm a big history reader and stuff. I'm like, you're just wasting your time. Well, one night she let the phone land, and I'm like, I'm gonna get on here and see what this is about. Yeah. I'm like typing in tractors and watching tractor videos. Like, that's pretty cool. Well, I didn't think too much about it, and then it went on, and I was like, well, I can do that. I can make funny videos like them people. I mean, they're not that fun. I can do as good as they're doing.
Yeah. She's
like, well, I don't know. So I started making some videos. Well, I don't want to say blew up, but it really took off. And then 6 months, I had like 100,000 followers. She said it was good. I don't know what's good anymore, but it's kind of one of those things I don't probably make as big a deal out of it as a lot of people do because it's just, to me, I just post stuff. I mean, I wasn't ever trying to get followers and attention and all that. It just kind of happened. Organically, and I think that's one of the things people like because it's all organic and it's just me.
That's why it's fun.
Yeah, I don't want it to be a job. I just put stuff on there, crazy stuff or whatever, and usually the videos I make for me don't get near the likes. If I make one and I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever made, it'll get like 500,000 views. Like, I'm like, I don't know what to post. Like, this crazy off the wall stuff is the stuff that always does good for me. Yeah, but it's been an adventure. It's really cool.
What's been the most surprising or rewarding aspect of that?
I would say the most surprising is like just people coming up to you everywhere you go. And like most of my followers are rural blue collar people, which that's the people we're around a lot, whether it be farm shows, farmers, or it's just people coming up to you and talking to you. And I remember the first time anybody ever recognized me was like May of 21. We were eating Mexican in Walnut Cove, and people like chased me out of the restaurant. Like,
Really?
are you that guy on TikTok? I was like, yeah. And I don't know, even to this day, I don't know how to handle that, because to me,
That
I'm
ain't
just
you.
a redneck.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
being me.
Yeah.
And I don't see the hype to me. People get it absolutely like excited, like pumped up. And I'm like, I'm just a normal guy. Just come over here and talk to me. Like, don't make me bigger than I am. I'm just an old country boy, and I'll talk to anybody. And that's, I mean, it don't matter to me. I'm not trying to put on any airs. And people are like, are you just as crazy a redneck in real life as you're on TikTok? I was like, yeah, it's me. I'm not an actor.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's like the first time you brought me corn. We talked on the phone. You come over here and brought corn. I bet you were here for an hour, hour and a half.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Till dark, I think.
Yeah, and
chatting.
And that's a lot of that comes from my grandpa and my mama. My mama could walk to the mailbox and meet 4 people. I mean, that's just how she is. My mama go to the grocery store 4 hours because she's going to talk to everybody in the grocery store. And she says when she was younger, she was very shy. I don't know how much of that I believe, but I grew up around them, and you just talk to everybody.
Yeah. And
TikTok has kind of expanded on that, because I don't want to go in a restaurant or somebody and somebody be a follower and me snub them. So if somebody's looking at me, I'm like, hey, how are you? And I don't know whether they're just looking at me or they're like, that's that guy from TikTok.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people looking, and I'm like, I don't know. So I just started speaking to everybody, because I don't want nobody to think
people think you're
uppity
something
or
different.
Yeah. But it's at the same time, it's made me a better person, or a more personable person.
Yeah.
Because like I say, I try to talk. If you look at me, like, I'm going to speak to you.
Yeah.
Especially, and you'll see people, like, places you go, like, looking out of the corner of the eye, and you know what they're looking, and I'll be like, I'll turn around and like, hey, how are you? And even if they don't make the connection, I don't feel like I've been a jerk to them or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because that's not who I am anyway. But before all this, I wasn't near as personable as I am now. I didn't talk. I mean, speak to everybody. But now I feel like, I got to talk to everybody, which I don't mind it. I mean, I love it.
So would you say that's the way that the TikTok following has kind of changed you as a person?
Yeah.
Made you more personable?
Yeah, it's made me more personable. And also in some aspects, people are crazy this day and time. It's kind of withdrawn me, like my kids. I don't really post nothing with the boys now. I try not to post nothing about where I live. Like, I'll post the farm. But I know people personally have had people come to their farms and stuff like that. And I don't mind people coming to the farm and, talking. But when people come to your house or to your business, you never know their intention.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they've seen you online, because it's a crazy place. So I try to keep everything reserved, and I pick and choose what I let people know.
Right.
And I think you got to do that, even if you're don't have a social media following this day and time.
Absolutely.
People are crazy. Yeah, everywhere you go.
I mean, it's like we started. It just ain't like it was back when.
No, the world has changed. 20, 30 years ago, you could about trust everybody. Now you can't trust anybody. I mean, so many different people, especially in our area, have moved in that aren't natives.
That's right.
So to speak, from Davidson
houses
County.
are going up like crazy.
Houses are going up everywhere, and it's just a different demographic and different culture than it was when we were kids.
Yeah.
Now, did you grow up in Davidson?
Yeah.
Did you grow up around here?
Yeah, born and raised.
Okay. I can remember, and you can remember as a kid, when you walk in a restaurant, just about everybody in there.
Absolutely.
You might not know them real good, but you knew who they were.
Yeah.
Now you walk in a restaurant around here, you might not know anybody.
Yeah. We used to, you go to Walmart.
That was like family reunion. You just go to everybody,
everybody. Yeah. And now it's like, who are these people?
Yeah.
And where'd they come from?
I don't know. I think when they build a Sheetz, I think that automatically attracts.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about people, but there's some different people outside of a Sheetz.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, all the time. I think it's a good thing. I mean, I'm not complaining about it necessarily. It's just, it's a big culture shock from what it was when we were kids. And it hasn't been that long ago, because we're still good and young.
Yeah.
We're not midlife yet. We're still on the downhill side. We're not over the hill yet.
Well, that's one thing I think about you is you're the kind of guy, and I think you'd say the same thing for me, that we could shake each other's hand, walk off, and trust one another just as well as you could back in the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And you just can't do that with people these days. It's just not the same.
And that's just the way I was raised. It's like, if you give somebody your word, that's as good as a contract.
Yep.
Like, when I do business now with people, and people like land, whether it be landowners, I farm their land or whatever, and they want to get this big contract down, I'd rather just let me tell you what I'm going to do and shake your hand and look you in the eye. And to me, that's better than any paper contract there is. Like, we can sign our name all day long. That's just paper. Yeah. If I tell you what I'm going to do and shake your hand, that's binding.
Consider it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any way possible, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And this day and time, you've got to protect yourself.
Yeah. People are so happy. And
it's crazy. And just the liability. You're liable for everything now. Whether it be at your house or you invite somebody over and they trip down the stairs, they're going to sue you.
Yeah.
I might try that here later. I might push myself down the steps. No, I don't do that to you. But it's just a crazy world we live in. That's the biggest change, I would say. When we were kids, you heard about crazy stuff other places.
Yeah.
It wasn't here.
Yeah.
And you might hear somebody's house getting broke into, but it wasn't a common thing. It was once every 6 months. It's not.
It was a shock when that happened.
Yeah. Now it's every day.
Yeah.
Now, I think, too, Facebook and all the social media.
Yeah, some of it is where you hear it.
Yeah, that's like my grandpa said. He said, we didn't hear about anything in the 20s and 30s. You knew what happened in your neighborhood. That was it.
Yeah.
You didn't know what was going on.
And it took you time to figure that out.
Yeah, and stuff in the war or whatever, it took 2 or 3 weeks or even a month to get back to you.
Yeah.
Whereas now people put everything on Facebook. And
which I think that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. We have people so worried and stressed. Well, we know everything and we see everybody. You know, we see the highlight reel of our friends that we went to school with on Facebook and we go, well, I don't have a new house or I don't have a new car. And then
it's a highlight reel.
Yeah,
that's all social media is for a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's okay as long as we understand it. That's what it is.
Right. That's what I told my wife when I started this TikTok thing. I said, this ain't me putting on, and I'm a redneck. I mean, I'm just going to call it like I said. I ain't showing no highlight reel of my life. I'm going to show them the real deal and what really happens. And social media is designed for people to build a false life. That is what it is. It's
hide behind the keyboard.
Hide behind the keyboard, build a false life, and show a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And you see all the good stuff, but you never see. People ain't going to post when things is going bad in their life. They're going to post all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a different world we live in.
It is. I say it all the time. I think that's why it's so important to be in community with some good people that'll hold you accountable.
That's exactly right. And you got to have people, like you said, to hold you accountable.
Call you out.
I go make some talks about my TikTok deal and all that. I tell people with farming, if you see a farmer that's misrepresenting what we do or making us as a group look bad, well, that affects us all. So, I said, don't blast them on social media like everybody else does.
Right.
Go pull them aside, put your arm around them and say, hey, this might not be the best look. And that's everybody wants to just blast everybody on social media now, no matter what it is. And it's a lot better just to be subtle and sometimes just go talk to people. And, hey, I don't agree with what you're doing there. And you can talk it out. And maybe they change or maybe they don't, but at least you've tried.
Yeah. I've heard it said that the best way to address somebody is say, help me understand why you're doing this. I've found that helpful.
Oh, yeah.
You and Madison been married, 5 years now?
Yeah, we got married in 2019.
And you got 2 kids?
Yep. 2 boys. There's something else. They're a handful. Especially Henry, my oldest one. He's into everything now. He's just at the age where he's really blossoming with his personality, I guess you'd say. He's going to be a handful for us. I don't know how Holland, our youngest son, he's just 9 months, but Henry, he's going to be a character.
Yeah.
He's funny now, stuff he comes up with and says, and I don't know where he gets it all sometimes, but he's a lot of fun to be around. He's my little buddy.
It's good to have a little farm buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like it.
No, there's nothing like anybody that listening that doesn't have kids. That's the biggest change that'll happen or for me.
Oh, absolutely.
When you have kids, like when you get married, it changes. Yeah. When you have kids, it completely
really changes.
Your world turns upside down.
When you're raising your boys, you're running the farm, all the things that you and Madison do, how do y'all raise them, integrate your faith in that?
It's really hard, and I'll give Madison a lot of credit for this. She does really good with the boys when I can't be there because I work, I got the farm going, work my other job, and a lot of times it's just a full schedule. There's never a day when I don't have anything to do. I can do something every day of the year. It's just wide open, and she's very good at getting me to slow down and spend time with the boys, which I appreciate because if she was one that said go work all the time, that's exactly what I'd be doing. So I'm grateful for you for being able to pull the reins back on me sometimes. Like, hey,
that's good.
These boys are growing up, and I do realize it. And one of the coolest things about farming, especially being a small family farm like we are, like Henry now, he can go with me. So I'm not going to take him in a dangerous situation, but, if we're just hanging out around the farm, turning wrenches or something like that, he can be there with his little toy tractor playing in the dirt, and he can go with me. And As Holland gets older, he can kind of transition into that stage. And they're not to the point, or Henry's not to the point he can really work now, but he's to the point he understands what's going on, and he's picking up on things. And it's neat to see it through his eyes. Every week you take him with you, he picks up something else, a little skill, or he'll be standing there, and I say, hand me a wrench or hand me a screwdriver, and he'll hand you something. And, you know, he's catching on, and it's really cool to do that with kids. And as far as the faith thing, that's been really tough for us. We were out of church for a long time. We've actually just in the past 3 or 4 weeks started going to a new church. Really love it. Great people. And for Henry and for Holland, they can be around kids their own age. And it's going to benefit the whole family, obviously, but you want your kids to be raised up in the church and raised with like-minded people and have that solid foundation. And it's really hard to do this day and time, as crazy as the world is and everybody's schedules is. And I think a lot of our generation has lost sight of where we need to be looking. And it wasn't that we were unfaithful. It's just we weren't going to church. I mean, that's just how it was for us. And Henry loves the children's program. They got a great children's program, and that's what it's about, really. And we know a lot of people that think like us, our age. Yeah. So it's been a really good fit, and we've really, really enjoyed it. It's exciting to get up and go to church, which is that's good. Yeah, that's encouraging. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Were you raised in church?
Yeah, I was. I was raised Baptist, and then we moved from where we lived further away, and we started going to a Methodist church. Yeah. And this is going to sound bad. I never had a youth group I fit in with, like through church. Like, I knew them all.
You were already an old soul.
Yeah, I don't want to say this sounding bragging. I was very mature through my teenage years because I'd always been around old people. I didn't buy into all the crazy stuff that teenagers do. Not saying I didn't have my crazy moments.
Yeah, sure.
But I always tried to keep it kind of low key, and I've done a lot of crazy stuff. I'm not saying that, but I was just an old soul, and I never had a youth group that I really connected with, so to speak. Yeah. And that was tough for me for a long time, and in and out of church. And it's just nice to go with people that think like you, and you all got the same goals with your faith. Yeah. And like I say, there's a lot of distractions now. It's a lot.
I agree. Yeah.
That's one thing. Sunday used to be a day where everybody kind of relaxed and went to church.
Everything stopped.
Yeah, and now it's just another day. Yeah. Unless you want Chick-fil-A, it's just another day. That's basically everything's open. And being a farmer, we do a little bit on Sunday if we've absolutely got to, but it's not a day where we're trying to get a lot done. I mean, I try to kind of take it easy if I can. And, you know, they say if your ox is in the ditch, you better get him out, but I try to take it easy on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, of course, my job's an ox in the ditch. Yeah. People die every day of the week.
That's right.
So sometimes I do work on Sundays, but we try to still get to church. One thing that I was thinking is, as far as us being mature from an early age, you know, you grew up around your grandpa and farmers and 60 and 70-year-old men. Yeah. And at 16 years old, started at the funeral home and started facing massive, like, tragedies and death and and working with grown men. And I was not even a man myself, and it grew me up quick.
Oh, yeah.
So it was different.
And this is a kind of personal question. So do the tragedies affect you like they did then? Or do you disconnect yourself?
Yes and no. So one thing that I always say is I'm highly connected to my families that I serve emotionally. Right. But I try to put myself where they're at. Right. And there has to be a healthy dose of that. Right. Because that could take you way too deep. Oh, yeah. And that's when people get real mental and things. But yeah, I've heard doctors talk about how over time they just get kind of hard to it. I always tell our staff, if you feel like you're getting hard to it, it's probably time to get out. Yeah. You got to have empathy for the family, which is a lot different than sympathy. Yeah. And anybody can sympathize with somebody. Man, I'm sorry for your loss. But to get down in the trenches and be like, oh, yeah, man, I can't imagine right now what it'd be like. That's got to be so hard. I'm putting myself in that position. And kids,
I'm going to put you in a box here like a first responder or somebody like that. Yeah. And I've been raised around a lot of first responders, and I was in junior fireman. And I find a lot of those people I talk to, you know, you've got a box. Yeah. And that's where you put all that tragedy and pain and what you've seen. Kind of shut the box when you've got to. And when the box opens, you deal with it. Yeah. However you deal with it as a first responder or whatever. Yeah. And then you shut the box back. And it can't be in your mind while you're doing your job for them. Yeah. But there's a box in your mind, and I feel like that's something a lot of people deal with no matter what occupation you're in, you know. Tragedy, everybody experiences it sooner or later, and it's
just how big it is.
Yeah, it's just life.
I think One of the things that I've realized is that first responders, funeral service, that kind of thing, I think the mental health, we've been more aware of it.
Yeah.
People literally have PTSD from some of the things they've seen that used to, it's like, man, get over it.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, man, it's a big deal. And
oh yeah, in our lifetime, there was a time when you didn't talk about it.
yeah,
And even in farming, it's really changed.
were you weak?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what it
oh, yeah.
boiled
Don't show no weakness.
Yeah.
And I was raised a little bit like that. I won't say full blown.
Yeah.
And I want my boys to have some of that, but also want to say, hey, if you need to talk about this, talk to me. You know, I'm here for you.
Healthy balance of it.
Yeah. And I want to raise men, but I also want to raise men that aren't afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's, as a goal, a pretty good goal. But like farmers, at one time were the number one occupation for suicides per capita because it's a high stress job. You've got generational pressure on you from maybe your dad, grandpa, whoever you inherited the farm for. You don't want to be the one to screw it up. It's a lonely job. A lot of them work by themselves, and it's not something anybody talked about. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on one man or one woman, whoever's running the farm, to get it to the next generation, especially for a 4, 5, 6 generation farm. You don't want to be the one to screw it up and lose it
right
for the next one. And I think mental health on the farming side of it has really changed. Now you can Zoom call and stuff. If you need to talk to somebody, you don't have to go to town and park outside of the counselor's office because that's
and then somebody see it.
Weakness, you know. And I think the mental health thing is great no matter what occupation you're in or what business you're in, that we can talk about it now. It's not something that you've got to hide, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's changed in the past 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. What role does Madison play in the farming and that kind of thing?
Day-to-day operations, as far as the farm work, she doesn't really have a lot to do with that because she's so busy with the boys. But at the same time, she really helps me. She can get the boys. She's the home manager. I mean, she's got an off-the-farm job too, but she can manage. And if I need her to do something, she can go do this or that. But she's the biggest gear in the transmission that keeps us running. And the unsung hero of what I do, because I couldn't do, especially with 2 kids, without her. And to be a farmer in this day and time and go work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, I feel like it's a selfish thing to do.
Yeah.
Whereas she's kind of the buffer there, and she'd take care of the kids and get them ready for bed. And when Dad shows up, he can tuck them in.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm traveling or out of the road. I always try to be home and eat supper with the boys and put them to bed. But she's definitely not day-to-day operations, but she's definitely one of the biggest.
She's the glue.
She's the glue. Yeah.
Holds everybody together.
Yeah. And she takes care of them boys. They ain't no better mama nowhere. I put her up against anybody, even my own mama. You don't mess with them boys. She takes care of them.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's invaluable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
I mean, she'll get ill sometimes that I've been out too long or gone. And, you know, me being the talker I am, I say I'll be home in 15 minutes and run into somebody and talk to them for an hour. You know how.
My wife will understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
She says my 15 minutes is usually 2 hours.
Well, you know, that's a farmer anyway. You got to put a 20% increase on the factor there. But it's not a perfect harmony, but we make it work. And I try to allow her to do things she needs to do and wants to do when time on. Because if it was up to me, I'd work 100 hours a week, come on, put the boys to bed. And I think it's going to evolve, too, when they can both go with me and they get old enough that they can not take care of themselves, but I don't have to be right on top of them. You know, hey, boys, y'all go play, you do whatever over here while I'm working, or you can go with me on the tractor, but I don't take him to, you know, anything with any danger.
Get it hurt.
Yeah, I'm not going to put him in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard any time you can, obviously in farming, it's a little bit different than just anything else. I heard a guy say, anytime you leave the house, take one of your kids with you.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, our kids are both kind of young still, but when they get to that, you know, over 8 years old, can manage themselves. Just take one of them with us every time we go somewhere. And I remember my parents did that with me.
Well, I mean, when we were kids, you went everywhere with your parents. I don't want to go nowhere the kids can't go. Like, if they can't go, I don't care nothing about going.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, you evolve as the kids get older and they can do more for themselves. And I hope that for everything I miss now, you know, just being a working dad or working parent, you're going to miss stuff. You can't be there for everything. Hopefully, if one of them or both of them on a farm, I can come back and work with my kids. You know, not a lot of people get to do that. That's what I'm hoping for on the backside of it, for everything I miss now, trying to build this for them. If they want to take part in it, we'll be able to work together. And
trying to hold it all in balance.
Right.
And trying to figure out, you know, I got to provide for my family, but I want to spend as much time. I guess I've got to experience that at some level because I didn't see my dad a ton when I was young.
Right. And
but I got to work with him.
Right.
As I got older.
Right.
Basically 3 solid years I worked with him every day.
Right.
And so I got to spend a lot of good quality time with him then. And that really gave me a good, strong work ethic. And then I've done the same with my grandfather. But then on the other side of that, I saw my dad pass away when I was 19. He was 43.
Oh, yeah. And I mean,
and so then I got to see that, well, we're not promised tomorrow either.
Right.
So what's the balance of it? You have to live for today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. And we probably had pretty similar raisins and backgrounds.
Yeah.
My dad worked all the time. He worked in town, then he had his own business on the side.
Yeah.
So it took me being a dad to understand, hey, he was just providing.
Yeah.
Like he was doing everything he could to make sure me and my sister and my mom were taken care of. And I forever appreciate that.
That's
and
right.
it's hard when you're young to understand. And he was a great dad. I mean, he provided, he was there, but he couldn't be there all the time.
Yeah.
Just like I am. I can't be there all the time. There's times when you got to go roll. And it's just like you say, it's a hard balance. It's hard to.
It is.
And we're balancing more than the generations before us. There's just so much more going on.
So much more fast paced.
Yeah. And I feel like when we were kids, the kids went with the parents. Wherever your mom and dad went, now the parents go with the kids, which I don't know that that's good or bad, depending on what's going on, but it's a different world. And I've probably said that 15 times, but it's a different world.
It is. It's just different. Well, looking back, what do you think are the biggest differences between your childhood and the world that your kids are being raised in now?
I mean, the default answer is technology. Just cell phones, computers, everything like that. And my boys, especially Henry, he's old enough, he don't watch TV. He don't get an iPad. I mean, no judgment. You can parent your kids however you want to, to anybody. But when I left a while ago, he was crying because he couldn't go outside because his mom wanted him to eat supper. He wants to be outside all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's something that's lost in the generations today. He's been outside all day today. Stay with his grandma. He's been outside. He wants to play in the dirt, do what boys are supposed to do, play with worms or whatever. And I think that's something that we've lost. Now it's just, you see so many people, and it don't matter whether you're out to eat or wherever, they're just, here, kid, hold iPad. And I told my wife, I don't want him to be just sitting in front of the screen. I want him to play.
Yeah.
And play outside. And I don't know if that's old time thinking or if I'm dull being that way, but I just want him to have a childhood as similar to ours as he can, because all that computer stuff is great. And he's going to have to learn how to operate computers. It's just part of the culture now. But I want him to have a childhood. I want him to be a kid.
Yeah.
And you see so many young kids with cell phones or whatever. I mean, young kids.
Oh, yeah.
When he can afford to pay for a cell phone, he can get whatever he wants. That's the point I'm at. And I'm not judging anybody on how you parent.
Yeah.
That's just how I want it to be.
Choose their way.
And he don't like to watch TV. He's kind of an old soul, too, and he wants to be outside playing, and we let him as much as possible.
Yeah.
And this winter, when it gets cold and stuff like that, and he can't go outside, I don't care if he watches some cartoons or whatever kids watch these days, because I'm out of the loop on that too. But I'm not going to let him sit there all winter in front of a TV screen.
Well, if you were to give parents your bit of advice, and like you said, everybody can parent however they want, but how do you keep the back wind in your parenting?
Right. And that's really hard to do this day and time because everybody's so technical and cell phones and computers. My mom and daddy are old school people. They've always been old school people. So when he goes to grandma and grandpa's, he gets that old school. My wife's mom and daddy are old school people. Mm-hmm. So it's easier for us, I feel like, because, I can see similarities in my mother-in-law and my grandma. And I can see with Henry and his grandpa, my wife's daddy, a lot of similarities between me and my grandpa. So it's almost like watching it happen again. It's almost like watching my own childhood, because they're just old country people. And I love that because he's going to get to experience things that a lot of kids raised this day and time won't. He's going to get to go fishing with them and stuff like that and be in the outdoors. And he's going to get to ride tractors and feed cows and do all the farming and stuff. So
when you say old school, tell me what you mean by old.
I mean the old time ways, like when we were kids, our grandparents, like my grandma and grandpa, the World War II generation, they're very
slower paced,
down to earth, good salt of the earth people, unassuming, just people that take care of their neighbors and generally are good human beings. I mean, going back to what we started talking about, that World War II generation, if you look at just good people, I think you got a higher percentage of just great human beings there that would take care of each other, take care of their neighbors, love one another, and just be who God wants us to be more than anybody's sense. It's just got so skewed as to what faith is and what church is, and it's.
I agree.
Yeah, the Bible's still the Bible, though.
Yeah,
I mean, the
Word of God don't change.
Still there. Yeah, the Word. Yeah, there you go. The Word of God ain't changed.
Well, and I think that's something we're going to talk about on one of our podcasts is some church hurt. You know, some of these churches have gotten real legalistic and just religious and made it more about rules and regulations than it is about Jesus and grace.
Yeah.
And you got to hold that all in tension. But I think that's definitely something that has pushed people away from the church, particularly in this area.
And I think you've got a lot of church people that ain't found Christ.
That's right.
And you've got a lot of people that have found Christ that ain't church people.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing any fingers or any judgment, but when you can get those both in harmony, when you find a church and find Christ, and I think that's when you're spiritually sound. And I'm not one to be talking about how people worship or anything like that or their journey with Christ, but I think when you can get in a church that you enjoy and people you enjoy, and everybody's got the same goal in mind.
Yeah.
You know, church ain't the same everywhere you go.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Final question. What does back when mean to you?
Back when, to me, is just a simpler, slower paced time. And it could be our childhood. It could be our grandparents' childhood. It could be 10 years ago. But every generation, there's a pivotal moment. I think when we were kids, 9/11, everything changed after 9/11. That's for our kids' generation, or maybe the generation behind us, COVID. Our grandparents' generation, either the Great Depression, Pearl Harbor, when we joined World War II. Every generation has one of those moments.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember before COVID, we did this. I remember before 9/11, this happened.
Yeah.
I remember before, whatever it is. I think that's, to me, back when, right? When you can say, before this, everything changed. The world we live in is not the same world before COVID.
Yeah.
It's not. The world's the same, but people are a little different than they were. And in 10 or 20 years, there'll probably be another event that's going to change people's perception and how the world works.
Or less than that.
Yeah, it could happen any day now, but there's all kinds of pivotal moments in history. And I think before that, you say, well, back before this or back before that.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. I talk to my grandpa a lot now about growing up in the Great Depression, he went to Germany during World War II and France, there at the kind of the tail end of the war, and the changes he's seen in 97 years.
Oh, good.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, they went from living in a house, there's 9 of them in a 500 square foot house, didn't have any plumbing, to what we've got now. We can do anything on a cell phone.
Yeah.
It's just crazy to see what he's seen. What are our kids going to see? What are we going to see in another 60 years? Are we going the right direction? That's the thing. Everybody, we need this technology with it. Are we going the right direction?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes we're making everything easy, but at the same time, we're making life more complicated.
Spinning our wheels. It's like the more technology and the more we get, the more we have to take care of.
That's exactly right. It ain't about, it's like farming. It's not how much you can plant. How much can you harvest?
Yeah, come on.
And it's like a garden. It's what you can take care of.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people, you see, are just so stressed out, running here, running there. And it's kids and school and jobs and
sports.
It's like some days I just want to go to work and come home and hang out with my kids. Like, let's just go play in the dirt outside. Yeah. I think that's just simpler times.
My youngest is a lot like Henry, and you know, you give him dirt, a little dump truck, tractor.
That's it.
Happy as can be.
I can turn Henry
hours.
I can turn Henry out. We got to dump the sand pile. He'll play there all day in the same spot. Like you'll never hear a peep out of him. He'll be right
same thing out there.
And
that little excavator he sits on.
And he'll run so simple. Like you can buy him $10,000 worth of toys or $100 worth of sand dumped in your yard, and Henry's gonna go to that every time.
Yeah.
And you know, with Holland, he's too young to really tell what he's gonna like yet. But I tell Henry all the time, you've got to teach him. It's not just me and your mom. Me and your mama taught you. I said, you're part of this too now. You got a little brother. You've got to show him how to be a good example.
Be a leader.
Yeah, be a leader.
Yeah.
And I say, you always take care of your little brother. And so it's fun to be a boy dad.
Yeah,
I would have loved a girl if I'd had one, and my wife wanted a girl on our second one, but I was excited when it was another boy.
Yeah.
Being a parent's a great thing, but it's, to me, especially raising boys, mama can nurture them, and then dad, we got to be the one, like, here's the world.
Yeah.
Like, here you go, we're going to get you ready for it.
Yeah.
And it ain't going to be easy. Yeah. And I'm not good at being sensitive, so I don't feel like I'd have done good with a teenage girl, or like, with a boy, you can be like, man up, son, here's the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, girls, you got to be a little more subtle.
I've said that a number of times. Yeah.
And I'm not going to shoot any teenage boys coming over to my house to pick up my daughter.
That's
so I'm
right.
excited about that, too. It's a different world.
It is that. But, well, Will, I thank you for coming on the podcast.
I'm glad to be here. I hope it's something suitable in there for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we talked about a little bit of everything.
Sure enough. The real conversation was before, and
oh, yeah.
And will be after.
Yeah,
sure.
We probably got another hour here before I go home.
That's right.
But it's been awesome, and I'm glad to see you going through this. And
yes, sir.
see you journey through the podcast world, and just remember me when you're on a national level.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great time talking and hope to see you again soon. May your faith continue to grow, and may your life be filled with grace and peace. This is Faith and Life Unscripted. Y'all take care.